Today is the observation and celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King. Dr. King's life and his work had such relevance for all of us, for people across cultures, across ages, but specifically for me, because again, I was a teenager here in Memphis, Tennessee. He came here to work with the sanitation workers. He helped to lift up my life at a time when I wasn't even sure what it was all about. And so today we're going to have a conversation with Joanne Goldblum and Colleen Shattuck, who wrote an amazing book a few years ago called Broke in America: Seeing, Understanding, and Ending U.S. Poverty. And what Colleen and Joanne have written and the research that they have done, this is a simple book. Because believe it or not, it's a simple problem to solve if we individually and as a country have the will to do this. So I hope that you will stay tuned for this conversation. And as we begin our conversation with Colleen and Joanne, this title, Broke in America, to me, it not only talks about money. You know, we love money in this country, but the whole idea that poverty breaks people's spirits, it breaks up families, it breaks their heart, it breaks the soul. We have these conversations now about mental illness. What poverty is trauma. And so the idea that poverty is breaking America, all Americans. And you'll hear more about that when we talk with Joanne and Colleen. So thank you very much. And I hope you enjoy the conversation. And we look forward to having you join us at the series in February. Take care and lead on. Hello, this is Vicki Clark. And today is the celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King. And I felt like that today there was no other two people I would rather talk to about poverty and the intersection of poverty and racism than Joanne Goldblum and Colleen Shattuck. So I want to welcome both of you. And I want to thank you both for writing this amazing book, Broke in America. And Dr. King understood the intersection of poverty and racism. And so let's start with some numbers. There is a common perception that people of color experience poverty more often in this country than white. So would you all, somebody talk, let's talk about that.
So the fact is that more white people in the United States are poor than Black people. Now, it's true that a higher percentage of Black people are poor. And that's because of the racial makeup of the United States. So for the population, there are more people who are Black who are poor. But the fact is that the largest group of poor people in the United States are white people. And you're right, it is a common misconception. And I think Colleen and I would both agree, and Colleen, you can tell me if I'm misstating this. This comes as a result of what happened when President Ronald Reagan introduced the idea of the welfare queen. What do you think, Colleen?
Yeah, I mean, very much so. There are, when you look at stereotypes about people in poverty, which are very negative and unfair, and you look at stereotypes of people of color, which are very negative and unfair, they overlap exactly. And this is one of the reasons why Americans are so stingy with any sort of assistance, because, you know, it's all tied up with racism. We don't want to give people welfare because it's just those people who don't want to work. There was an interesting study a few years ago where they asked people what percentage of people receiving welfare are Black. And that counted SNAP, Medicaid, all kinds of government benefits. white people said they thought it was 38%. And Black people said they thought it was 35%. The real answer is 21%. Most people getting SNAP are white. But because we heap racism on poverty and any kind of program to address poverty, it makes these programs so much less popular. Right now, Congress is going to start debating cutting SNAP because of the budget cliff. And it's always going to be SNAP they debate cutting.
And SNAP was formerly known as the food stamp program.
Food stamps, yes.
What made the two of you? I mean, let's be honest. You're two white ladies. Why did you write this book?
Vicki, I think that's a really good question. And I think there are a lot of reasons. One reason is that, poverty is an enormous problem in the United States, regardless of race. And it's something that people don't talk about very much. And, the name of our book, Broken America, Seeing, Understanding, and Ending U.S. Poverty, we were very, we chose that on purpose because we think that people really don't see poverty. And even when they see it, to your point about, how people feel and believe about race and poverty, people don't understand it. And very frequently when you talk to people about government benefits, they talk about those people not deserving it. And then they also talk about people who do deserve it. And when you hear those conversations, they're very, very frequently racially motivated. But we felt it was important to write this book because we feel like people need to understand this because, poverty is not gravity. We made it, we can end it.
I would also
First of all, thank you for writing the book. The second thing is, again, I love this quote: racism and poverty are each other's evil twins. And that's what you've been talking about. And then the book, seeing it, because we don't want to see it. We turn our heads. Understanding, not sure if we really want to understand the root causes, because in your book, you actually talk about, you strip it to its bare truth. You're not giving these little, well, if people would do this and all this that we've all heard all of our lives, and then ending it, which is not aspirational for the two of you, because I know the two of you, and you believe, and I believe, that poverty can be ended. Dr. King believed that poverty could be ended. But here we find ourselves now, all these years later, and the poverty situation in America, now we're not even going to talk about the world, is getting worse. So this idea of the evil twins, it's just, we've gone through slavery, Civil War, the Reconstruction, Jim Crow, then the Civil Rights Movement, and then there was the war on poverty. Some people are old enough, there was an actual government strategy called the War on Poverty. Why do you all think, and I'll go to you, Colleen, why do you think these things have not been successful?
because they've been half measures. When we commit, we can do something. During the child tax credit, child poverty was cut in half in this country. That worked. But then Congress decided, no, let's not do that. That'll spoil people. We don't have the will to end poverty, which is why I'm so glad that we're doing this on MLK Day, because, like me, most people in this country call themselves Christians. You cannot be a Christian, be a racist, and you cannot be a Christian and be okay with your neighbor being hungry. You just can't, no matter what you tell yourself. So we need to get our policies in step with the values that we say we hold.
Well, I don't think you can be a person of any faith and turn your head and not see and understand and want to end suffering, poverty for anybody else. So what can people do? Because everybody talks about it. Well, some people don't want to talk about it, but we're talking about it. And what is it that folks can do? Individual people.
So I guess
Joanne?
first, I just like to say that it's true that people of faith can't understand this, but I don't think it's only about faith. I think we have to recognize that people who have a level of humanity shouldn't be able to live with this, regardless of what you believe. And, I think that in the US, a lot has been co-opted by this idea of faith. And I just think it's really important to recognize that that's not the only thing that drives us to try to change things. But in terms of what we can do individually, you can do so many things, and they can be big and they can be small, right? And in our book, we have ideas in each chapter about things you can do, and a whole portion of the book focused on what you can do. Some of the really easy things are, doing a food drive, doing a diaper drive, doing a coat drive, collecting things for people who need it. Um, you know, finding out about how your community deals with free lunch or not free lunch. Does your community have lunch debt? And understanding what they do there and how that works. Colleen, what are some of the others?
I would say that also on a policy level, big picture, the reason why poverty persists in this country is that wages have been flat since the 1970s. They have not kept pace with inflation, particularly with housing and healthcare. And we need to tell the truth about that. We need to stop blaming people for the situation they are in and call it out. We need to call on our political leaders and tell them the minimum wage is not high enough. We need to make sure that there aren't laws that prevent people who want to from joining unions. We need to empower workers to ask for more.
And we need to vote our conscience, right, Colleen? Because you can tell your elected officials what you think, but you have a choice in who represents you. And voting is really, really important. And I think that in the US, more and more of us have felt like it doesn't matter, but it really, really does.
Well, I like the way you all have talked about it, moving it, that there's from a charity issue to a justice issue. That is so powerful to me. Yes, people are always going to need basic things like diapers and food and clothes, but the system change of justice and justice and equity for everybody. And in your book, if you give me the liberty to read a little bit, you talk about, this is from a person who allowed you to use their full name, is Shane Ward, a former truck driver who had to give up driving because of disability. And he's now a full-time caregiver to his mother. And he says, I just want people that read this book to understand that we're not losers. We're not lowlifes. We're human beings that want everything in life just like everybody else. It's just that we don't have the funds to back it up as some people do. It doesn't make us losers, doesn't make us jerks. It makes us human beings who want better for ourselves. Just because of where we live doesn't mean we're losers or jerks. We're good people. If people just take the chance to learn that, understand that, and learn what we're going through, that's all I ask, to be treated decently. Shane Ward.
And that's exactly what it is, Vicki. If we all could just treat each other decently, we'd be in a much better place.
And
so
I'm
many
hoping
people,
that, go ahead, Colleen.
so many people that we interviewed work harder than either of us ever will. So many people we interviewed had bad backs from lifting patients and You know, they were tired from doing childcare. They were doing the work that was so essential that we said, you still have to come to work during COVID. But they didn't make enough to pay their bills on it. And that's wrong.
Well, I want to thank the two of you. First of all, I want to thank you for writing this book. I want to thank you for its clarity and for undertaking this. As you all know, I grew up in Memphis. I was a teenager when Dr. King was killed about 15 minutes from here. I saw the men walking in the street with the "I am a man" signs. In fact, one of the last remaining sanitation workers just passed away a few weeks ago, early in January. And I remember asking my mother, why are they wearing signs that say "I am a man"? They're men. They look like men to me. They look like daddy. They look like my uncles. And my mom said to me that some people, and I think she was trying to give grace, don't think that we, and at that time the term was Negroes, whether we're women or men, are full adults. And I had heard someone once call my father boy when he was 30 years old, and I did not understand that. And my mother, who was much more fiery than my mother, said she would not ever respond to the term girl. And so the idea of everyone having this singular idea that at that time they even called them garbage men. These men did not even make the same wages that the white sanitation workers made. They did not even have the same opportunities for cover. In fact, two of them were killed in an accident because they could not go into a building during a storm. And so the idea that, poor people don't work, like you say, Colleen, people who are at the poverty level work hard. They work 3 jobs, some of them. So I just want to thank you all for this. And I want to close with Dr. King's quote from his Nobel Peace Prize speech. He said, "The time has come for an all-out world war against poverty. The rich nations must use their vast resources of wealth to develop the underdeveloped, school the unschooled, and feed the unfed. Ultimately, a great nation is a compassionate nation, the quest for peace and justice." And I think a great person is a compassionate person. And I think if we could all see ourselves as being compassionate people, and you all are compassionate people, that's why you took years of your life to write this book. So I'm going to appeal to everybody's compassion to do what you can to help. And yes, we're talking about ending poverty. We're not talking about addressing poverty. We're not putting Band-Aid on it. You all said ending poverty. So thank you all so much. And let's just keep this work going. And if you all out there, if you haven't gotten this book, you got to get this book. So any last words, Joanne, Colleen?
Thank you, Vicki. Thank you for all you do. And thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, we'll keep going. We're not done.
No, we're
Take
not
care.
done.
Never.
Okay, happy MLK Day.
You
Thank
too.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.